Hi everyone. So today's video, we are going to cover domestic bank transfer flow, and we are going to take a look at customer current journey and current versus and future state, business requirements, functional requirements, process mapping, and user stories and acceptance criteria, test cases, and we'll touch on how if a defect come, how to manage a defect, and one query, business query, how to write it to a SQL query, one API question, and one business analyst interview preparation for related to this flow. Okay, so let's get started. Understand this one. Okay, okay, very fast. There we go. This is the dashboard. Okay. So you have joined the Canadian bank as a junior business analyst. So the bank wants to build a new domestic bank transfer flow. So let's take a look what are the functionality involved here. Send money to another bank, view transfer history, receive notification, track transaction status. So your responsibility is to gather requirements, document process, write user stories, and support testing. Okay. So let's understand the business scenario one more time. So John has a checking account. He wants to send $500 to Maria. So Maria has another account at another bank. So let's say we are transferring from RBC to CIBC. So John logs into mobile banking. He enters recipient name, recipient account number, amount. The bank validates the request. The money is transferred. Maria received the funds. So John received a confirmation notification. So this is the high level flow. Okay, very straight flow forward. Okay, so if this is your project, how you will create your user stories? How do you create your artifacts, B artifacts? So let's take a look. Okay, so the first step, you need to understand the business process, right? So now we have a small exercise to complete this one. So first one, John logs into banking. What banking? So John logs the mobile banking, right? So John enter the transfer. What John enters here, you can see recipient detail, right? Recipient account number, transfer detail. So John, the bank validates the detail, right? So bank validates the recipient account detail and all the information. The sender account is what happened, the sender account here, right? The sender account is this step, sender account is debited, okay? Receiver account is credited. So that means money has deducted from the John's account, the receiver account, Maria has received the money. Okay, so let's understand one more time the flow. So John log into the mobile banking. John enter the transfer details, account number, Maria's bank details. So the bank validates the information related to this transaction, right? So the sender account is debited, which is money is withdrawal, and the receiver account is credited. So this the same scenario in the business case. Here you see. Here also the job posting also explaining the same scenario, and the business scenario also it's explaining the same thing. And now we break into a process flow. So it's the same money movement, one account to another account, right? So we are writing in a different method. Okay, let's say if we convert it into a process flow, how we will document this one. So you can draw diagram using shapes here. Okay, so just to be um, easy, I just keep it this text flow. Okay, so customer, our John, goes to mobile banking app, transfer service, click the transfer money, enter the details, provide all the information, whatever information required on that flow. So request validated through API, check whether John has that much of money, and send this money to Maria, debit to sender, right? So payment network, receiving bank, credit receiver, notification service, customer confirmation. So these are the system flow. Okay. So now understand if you happen to write what is happening in the current state. So you can ask question, you can see how this is working, this money movement is currently how it's working, right? So today customers must visit a branch, complete paper forms, wait for processing, receive confirmation later. So long wait times, manual processing, human errors, poor customer experience. So you can document under this one. So future state, customers can transfer online, transfer using mobile banking, receive instant confirmation, view transaction history. So what are the benefits? Faster transfer, better customer experience, reduce operation cost. So now same scenario, how we will convert into a business requirement, okay? So customers, first requirement, customer shall be able to transfer money domestically. Why? So you can ask this question, okay? So here you see, we are matching requirement with what is the purpose. So prevent invalid transfers. Is it customer shall be transfer online, money domestically? So here you have to match here. You see, show transfer history, allow money transfer, notify customers, prevent overdraft. The customer shall be able to transfer money domestically, right? So that I think this is the right one. Why? That's why we are saying allow money transfer, right? Second one, customer shall receive transfer confirmation. Notify customers, right? That's D. The system shall validate recipient information. We choose allow money transfer. We choose notify customer. We have now prevent invalid transfer. We have show transfer history. We have prevent overdraft, right? So here we have the system shall validate recipient information. So here the right one, prevent invalid transfer, right? So we want to validate all the information, right? So that's the A here. Why we are doing here, we want to prevent invalid transfer. So number 4 business requirement, the system shall prevent transfers with insufficient funds, right? Somewhere I see here, prevent overdraft. That's it, right? What's the purpose? Customers shall view transaction history, right? So shows transfer history. So you can, when you are writing requirement, ask simple question, why we have to do, what is the purpose? So that's the exercise here, okay? So now let's go to functional requirement. So now you have question. If you start our job posting, right? This is the requirement, and we have written in a different way, business scenario. So same thing in a different way, same thing, different way. Now we talk about current and future state, talk about business requirement and the purpose. Now we are going to functional requirement, right? So how system should behave. That's why it's functionality and functional requirement. So we know this is the expected result. So how system should behave? So here validate sender account. That's one. Validate recipient account number. Yes, right? Validate amount. cannot say take from wrong. If John is sending, we have to verify the John's account, not the Sumit account. Validate recipient account. If you are sent to Maria, we cannot validate an account. Validate amount. If John is sending 500, we should check if John has that balance, right? Like see if the amount matches. That's his fourth one. Two, generate transaction ID to trace the transaction. Debit sender account, credit receiver account, store transaction, send notifications, display transaction history. Okay, so behind the scene, how the system flow architecture flow. This is the mobile app collecting information, right? John enter all the details from to account and amount, everything. So API receive the request. It's go through the customer service transfer service, notification, history. It's hit the core banking and it's go to the domestic payment network. And from there, the money will be transferred to the recipient account. Okay, so now we are 10, so we should go 11. It is 11, okay. So now let's create user stories. So user story format, as a want, I want, so that, right? So let's create a user story for this move money, right? So as a customer, I want to transfer money to another account so that I can send funds electronically. Very basic. So now let's go through some exercise, write some acceptance criteria, okay? So customer enters recipient, right? Account details, right? System validate account details, or like a system validate information. System complete the request. System send notification to customer, right? So this is how you can build your user story, okay? Now let's go to one more simple acceptance criteria, given, when, then method, okay? So what happened? So given, that's a condition, precondition. I'm logged into the mobile banking. So when John log into the mobile banking only, the rest of the flow continues, right? So when I enter valid recipient detail and amount. So when you're writing this method, you are like a customer, you're like a user. You have to think what customer is doing, okay? When I enter valid recipient details and amount, then the transfer should be completed successfully and a confirmation should be displayed. Okay, now let's go to 15th. I missed 15th. That's okay, no problem. Let's continue. Okay. Test case, okay, test case writing. So how you can write test cases for this one? So valid transfer. So you have to validate, verify if the transaction is successful. That's why valid transfer. So what's the expected result? Should receive transfer successful. Check invalid recipient. Check. So error should be displayed. Check with insufficient fund. Transfer rejected. This is expected. Bank amount. Validation amount. Right. So use send 0 and try to hit the submit button. Right. Blank recipient. No recipient. These are mandatory. 0 amount. Notification generated. Notification received. Transaction history open. History display. Okay. So now that's our full happy path, right? Like from here to here, all the parts. It's talking the same. Let me make it small. It's talking the same requirement in different way to explain, right? So you have to understand what's the business scenario and business requirement, a business process and process flow, and current state, future state, business requirement, and what's the system behavior. That's a functional requirement. And the high level architecture. So you don't need to create this diagram. So this is created by the architecture team. So then you write your user stories and talk to the team and you explain the acceptance criteria. Now you are like writing test cases like a tester. Okay. So now let's say everything is completed. This is built. A defect come. Defect is a bug, right? So let's say what is the defect? One scenario. So John transfer 500. Money is debited from John's account. Maria does not receive the funds. Or maybe John's account debited twice. So that should be, we should raise as a bug or defect. Okay. So how the SQL is involved here in this flow. So sometime customer might complain or like when tester raise a defect, first you can check in the database whether the database is updated correctly or not. That's exercise. That's where SQL is useful for BA, right? So here you can see find transfer. So you want to see this particular transaction, this John's transaction, right? Everything is stored correctly or not. So in order to see, you are writing a query, find transfer transaction for customer 1001. So select all from transfer transaction table. From the table name. This is a condition where customer ID is equal to 001, right? So when you get the complaint, when you get a defect, you will get this information, right? If it is the customer ID or reference number or KIF number or something, you'll get it. So you have to look the transaction using that where condition. So you can fetch the record and you can see whether validation is passed or everything is there or not. That's the first starting point to triage this bug or like investigate this issue. Okay. So API exercise here. So just to give you an idea, like these two knowledge is very important when you start working as a BA. So that's why I just want to, without technical, I want to provide an idea of how we can write, how this is connected to a business question. Okay. So here you see, this is the simple example, transfer API, post API transfer. Here we are sending. So in this flow, you are seeing customer flow, right? Diagram. Custom, John enter the detail here. It's come to the core banking system and it's go to the recipient bank. So behind the scene, how this data is transferred in a JSON format. So API is doing that job. Here you see, this is how the sender account is collected from the front end UI, right? Sender account, recipient account, and amount. So the question, which system will consume this API? So answer, the mobile banking application or online banking consume this API when a customer click transfer the money button, front-end application send this request to the transfer API. Okay. So now, if someone asks you to explain your project, this domestic bank transfer flow in interview question, how would you explain this one? Okay. So the question is explain the domestic transfer process. The customer initiated transfer using mobile banking. The request is sent to the API gateway to the transfer service. The system validates recipient information, check available balance, debits sender account, routes the transaction through the domestic payment network, credits the receiver account, store the transaction history, and send notification. As a business owner, I would gather requirement, create process flow, write user stories, define acceptance criteria, and support testing activities. So all about documenting and explaining to people, right? So same one use case, one scenario in a different of perspective, we are seeing this one. So this is your job. This is what you have to do. So when you're explaining, you can use simple example like John sent money to Maria, and you can explain through that story. So that's a storytelling through a story to your interview. Okay. So let's summarize. Let's find out if we achieve our goal. So we talk about domestic bank transfer flow and current was future state. And we talk about the business requirement. Then from the business requirement, we got some functional requirement, how the system should behave. That's a functional requirement. And we know what is the process mapping. And we created a sample user stored for more money. So we wrote the acceptance criteria in a two method. Test cases we identified. We discuss about the simple bugs and how you can query a customer. We discuss one select query, how you can use in the where condition. So API basic like how front end from front end API take this request and store this detail into the database. So we discuss how you can explain this payment flow, uh, more money flow uh, to a interviewer. Okay, I hope this helps for you. So let's meet in a different video in a different transaction flow. Thanks everyone. Have a good day.